Alright, let's wrap this up, shall we? By talking about the overall strategy that we're going for with this build and the tactics that you're going to employ. Hello everyone, and welcome back down here to the Gamer's Den with me, your host, Jordan, your Master of Lore and Storyteller Extraordinaire, here to wrap up talking about the first edition Pathfinder Druid by talking about the overall strategy that we've gone with for this build, as well as the general tactics that you're going to utilize and a couple of different ways that you can play this particular class out, especially with this build. But before we get into everything that we have on offer and have been thinking about so far, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member here at the Gamer's Den. Or if you've already gone on ahead and listed yourself on such an incredible roster of legendary heroes, then go on down to hit the like button and share that video far and wide. But now let's actually start getting into things here. And first and foremost, it's pretty obvious this is a melee combat focused build. You're going to be utilizing your wild shape and really trying to wade into the thick of things. But we've kept our wisdom score up really high because the druid is a full spellcasting class, and you would be remiss to let that be neglected. Now, there is an argument to be made, though, however, that it may be better to either just lean fully more into strength and the physical stats and have about a 14 for your wisdom score, so that way you can still have a pretty broad panoply of spells and have room to expand it out later with headbands of wisdom. And just really capitalize on that melee focus build, or to lean fully into wisdom and then kind of have everything else as supplemental around being a spellcaster. But as I've mentioned before, I try not to go for super optimized builds where you're good at every last thing, but this way you're still good at melee, but you can still be solid at combat, but your weaknesses are going to be those lower dexterity and constitution scores. You're not going to be quite as durable as, say, a paladin wading into the thick of things with their heavy armor, high strength, good charisma, and probably good to maybe okay constitution scores, depending on how they array things a little bit there. You're not going to be as survivable as them. You're not going to be quite as survivable as a barbarian is, or a fighter. At least not in just those raw numbers terms, but the big advantage that you have over everybody else is the utility you bring inside of and outside of combat. Because by the time we hit level 5 and we get the wild spell feat, it doesn't matter anymore whether or not we are in our animal form, in any of our combat forms, or scouting forms. You're going to be able to cast all of your magics very, very comfortably and reliably. You're going to be able to cast from any of your animal forms and have access to your whole suite of abilities. And just the fact that you can start using Summon Nature's Ally and bringing in allied creatures for flanking opportunities and to help supplement your own combat role is going to be massive. Not only that, but you have an animal companion that is going to be just decked out to the gills and just be absolutely staggering. And bear in mind that a lot of the magic items we talked about before, or certain enhancements to armor and weapons, are going to be applicable to them too. You can have Greater Magic Fang placed on your animal companion. You can give them an Amulet of Mighty Fists. You can equip them with Barding and get it enchanted, and they are going to be absolutely powerful, essentially bringing two characters for the price of one, and one of those characters can summon in other creatures and call in all of these different terrain affecting spells that are just going to give a lot of battlefield control and extra damage on top of it, potentially with other effects as well. Depending on how you're able to kit yourself out. For example, Spike Growth. Spike Growth is going to be just a massive area of effect with some decent damage and slowing of your enemies. And if you have the dazing rod to apply a dazing effect to any spells that deal damage and have saves, well, getting your opponents consistently and regularly dazed is absolutely going to be great. It's a great debuff to have, and combining it with a spell that has such a mass area of effect is going to yield just dividends of positive results for you and your adventuring party. But again, I can't emphasize enough that we are focusing on wading into the thick of melee with our wild shape ability. But you also can have a great deal of scouting utility. You can transform into a snake, or a hawk, or a mouse. And if you're pairing up with, say, the party's vigilante, or bard, or rogue, they can do a lot to help you get access to other areas that might otherwise be restricted. Situations where you would not be reliably let in, even in an animal form. You could have the bard pose as a falconer, a great trainer of these lethal hunting birds. And with their high charisma and their ability to deceive, to bluff, to use diplomacy to gain their way and finagle through all of these social situations, they can pose as this kind of a trainer, even though they have no such skills, because you are in the form of a hawk, and you can still just respond to the commands that they give and help to sell this impression that they are this legendarily skilled animal trainer, and they can have you fly around. And as you fly around through these different areas, say you're at this lord's castle or manor, you can get the scope of the layout of the grounds, start looking at the patrol patterns of different guards. You can even land on different sills and kind of peek in through windows and start taking in what the interior layouts might be and where you might be able to gain access to, or where the rogue or bard could gain access. Or further still, if you're teamed up with a vigilante who's part of high society and they've been invited to this incredible gala at the mayor's manor at the center of town, and you really need to investigate because you're pretty sure he's involved with some sort of secretive, dark cult activities. Well, they could hide you in the false bottom of a sole of a boot while you're transformed as a mouse. And once they gain access inside, they just flip open the latch, you scurry out and start scampering around into different areas where, for the most part, people aren't going to be super suspicious of there being a mouse. A few people might panic, but as far as anybody knows, you're just a normal mouse. And you can scurry around through all manner of different parts of this location and really begin to scout things out, and also get ideas of, again, layouts, patrols, where different rooms are at, and where you can comfortably use your magics to gain further entry into other areas. So the possibilities just abound depending on what your imagination is. Just bear in mind that since we've dumpstered charisma, if you're caught out in your normal humanoid form, you will not be able to pull off the same degree of sociability that the bard or vigilante might be able to do. You're not a social character, but you do have a lot of utility through your spellcasting, through your animal forms, and then you bring a great deal of combat ability as well. Your ability to use Summon Nature's Ally to create flanking positions for your different allies will be absolutely invaluable, and just bear in mind that for every attack that gets directed towards a summoned creature, whether it hits or misses, is still a win for you. That eats into the opponent's action economy, and an attack directed at a summoned creature is functionally a wasted attack, because what happens if they destroy a summoned creature? Poof! They disappear and vanish back into the ether. Whereas you and your allies remain relatively unharmed, or at least less harmed than you otherwise would have been. And not only that, but again, flanking opportunities. That sets up lots of sneak attacks for the rogue, precision-based damage attacks for vigilantes and other character classes that might rely on that to get extra damage dice out. Not only that, but it's an increase and bonus to your hit abilities. And just, again, it's just absolutely amazing to have that in place. And don't forget the giant summoning rod, which allows you to apply the giant template to various creatures that you summon, also brings a lot more utility in terms of combat. And it just really opens up a lot of things as your summoned creatures are able to occupy larger spaces, create larger flanking areas, and threaten wider areas as well too. Combining that with some of the larger constrictor snakes, allowing them to grab or even possibly swallow whole some targets, is just absolutely amazing. Definitely worth considering and worth doing. Again, should you be able to get access to such an item. And then of course there's so many other items that just open up so much for you. I mean, you have so many options beyond just wild shape. I mean, if you decide to lean more into domains, or if you want to become I forget what the term was, but the alternate ability in place of domains, or the animal companion, where you can put together these different natural reagents and create alchemical infusions, like what alchemists are able to create. That also is just an incredibly powerful ability, and just the options that you have there are staggering, are pretty damn cool too, and also very, very fitting of the overall motif for the druid. And now, when it comes to actually playing this class, it really depends on who and what you're teamed up with. This build assumes that you're building into more of a combat role while still having access to your full spellcasting ability. So this gives you a certain amount of flexibility in a party, where if you have plenty of melee characters, you can still be wild shaped but hanging out at the back, casting other spells, providing support to some of your squishier characters. If you're teamed up with a summoner, for example, you can help to protect them from any flanking attacks by some of the stealthier, sneakier characters. Or if an enemy spellcaster summons in monsters around you guys, you're at least there in place to help give support to the wizard. Whereas if you're a lot of lighter, squishier characters, rogues, vigilantes, bards, and the like, then you're absolutely invaluable and indispensable to your team, because not only do you still bring spellcasting, but you're bringing in other allies that you can summon, and also an ally through your animal companion, and you're no slouch in combat yourself either. And then, again, you still have a whole host of other abilities that are useful. You've got some very, very useful skills as a druid, too. Again, you're not going to be the most sociable and able to pull off social interactions, but you still have great knowledge skills. You still have, if you're in a low magic campaign with very little in the way of magical healing available, so you can't reliably pick up wands of cure light wounds all that often, you have access to the heal skill and will have means of being able to restore hit points for your allies that way, should you need to do that. And then again, also, because you're able to wild shape into all these different animal forms based on the animals you're aware of and familiar with, you are going to rarely be left without options. If you're in an aquatic campaign, or if you're just on a particular mission that is based in the sea or on board a ship somewhere, then you have access to shark forms, you have octopi, all kinds of other creatures that have some really, really great abilities that will put enemies at a disadvantage when it comes to dealing with you. So just think it out, kind of look around at what's going on, what the party composition is, what exactly needs to be brought to the table, and you should be able to do just fine. You may need to adjust a little bit here or there, do a little bit of research, think about what it is exactly you need to be doing, but talk it over with the other players, with the DM. Most DMs should be pretty comfortable with giving you some idea of what's going to be happening. I can't give everything away, can't tell you what exactly the story's going to be, but it would be a real dick move for a DM to go, hey, guess what? We're going to be on a ship-going campaign and have you on a ship for the first session and then strand you in the middle of a desert for the rest of the game when you built around but the upside with it is you're still going to have some flexibility even then should a DM decide to pull a fast one on you, so keep that all in mind. But, of course, what do you think? Go on down to the comments below and let me know your thoughts. Did you like today's video? Did you dislike it? What do you think of this build overall? Certainly, it is not the most heavily optimized, leaning into either being full combat or full spellcasting, but kind of has, I think, a pretty reasonable balance between the two, especially considering you can use your magic to supplement your melee abilities, or your melee abilities to help kind of supplement your magic and put you in a really nice, flexible spot where you can fill in on different roles on the fly pretty admirably, at least I think. But either way, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Hit those like or dislike buttons, and remember, if you're new here to the channel, go on down there, hit the subscribe button, and become a regular member. But with all that said, I've been your host, Jordan, your master of lore and storyteller extraordinaire. Thank you all so very much for your time, and you all have yourselves a good night.